Hello and welcome to Founders Speak. Samantha Rudolph with Babyation. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Hi,
Now,
everybody.
hey, do you go by Samantha or Sam?
Generally Sam, but I over the years I have learned to respond to both.
You've learned to respond to both.
I had
Okay,
to
I
train
got it.
myself.
Yes. It's like a Michael and a Mike and sometimes, you ask someone what they prefer and they won't tell you. Either one is fine, but really, I always think they do have a preference.
Well,
So
mine is definitely Sam.
yours is definitely Sam. So where are you joining us from this morning? We're doing our first Founders Speak via Zoom video conference. Where are you calling in from?
I am at the Rise Workspace in Clayton. So hopefully this all
Excellent.
works. This is fun.
Very nice. You're at the Rise Workspace, so you must be in one of the tiny little phone booth mother rooms.
I am. I
How
am. I missed my window to reserve a bigger conference room, so that's on me.
well, this is actually perfect, especially considering your business, which we'll tell everyone out about in just a moment.
Hmm.
So I am calling in from spring break. My 8-year-old daughter, Audrey, is on spring break this week. And so I've been having a partial working week, partial off week. And we came to my parents' lake house. And so in front of me, which you can't see, is a beautiful large lake. I'm in Litchfield, Illinois. And so the girls are downstairs with instructions to not come upstairs unless someone's bleeding really bad.
Fair enough. Can you turn the camera around so we can all be at the lake?
I checked, but the angle's not good at all. So Samantha, Sam, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our friends at the T-Rex Mobile. The T-Rex studio at the T-Rex Media Lab. Excuse me, the EQ Media Lab at T-Rex, which we're kind of taking on the road with us today. So why don't we start by you telling us about the business Babyation. So what is Babyation?
Absolutely. So we like to say that Babyation has reimagined the parent tech space, and our first product is a breast pump. It's quiet, it's discreet, it's smart. I could be talking to you right now and pumping, and you would not know. That's something that we're known for. Yeah.
But you're not positioning the business to be only breast pumps. There's more to the story.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we think that for better or for worse, and really for worse, the parent tech space is just so outdated, and parents, primarily women, have been forced to just kind of accept the options out there. And none of them have really leveraged the latest technologies. And so we really discovered that as we were developing this breast pump. But we do have a 2.5-year-old son. And so we kind of had this list essentially in his room where, oh yeah, we can do this better. We can do this better. This is now on our list. So it's kind of one of those times that's really good to be living the use case, because we know what problems we can solve.
Interesting. And why do you think that the space is so underserved? What is it about this part of the industry that has other companies not already innovating?
Well, I think it's a couple things, right? I think that you kind of look at products that have women as kind of the primary user in general, and you see that in everywhere from the menstrual space to cleaning products to things that are kind of in the predominantly women environment. And they're just all ripe for innovation because the decision makers, and in some cases the people designing the products, have been men. And so they don't necessarily see it as a problem. They don't kind of understand how challenging sometimes the user experience can be. So, I think this is just another example of that.
Interesting. So your suspicion is that there's a gender dynamic at play. And, I wouldn't have thought about that. So that's interesting. I guess you're saying that based on your direct experience looking at the owners of I'll say competitors, for lack of a better term. You're looking at owners and executives in the space that you're in. And would you say that they are mostly male?
Certainly in the parent tech space as a whole, certainly. And obviously kind of for every rule there is an exception. So I'm not going to say this is only a gender dynamic problem. I think some of it is that there has been a captive audience. And when you have companies that have been around for a long time and have experienced success and really do have a captive audience, there's often not a lot of incentive to innovate. You see that in many industries, kind of beyond parenting industries. That said, with all of the changes in technology, creating products has almost been democratized for lack of a better word. 3D printers have made it so much easier to innovate and to prototype and so much less expensive. 10 years ago, the technology just weren't there for all of these types of startups, not only in breast pumps or in parenting spaces, just in general.
And why do you think, I would think from the the dynamic that you're talking about, you've got these industry giants who don't have the incentive to innovate. And that would scare a lot of people away from competing with them head to head. And so what had you and your husband, your co-founder, what had you say, we can do this? We're going to take them on. Well, that was a bold move.
In hindsight, I guess it was, and it is, and it will probably continue to be. But some of it is just, we came up with the idea in 2014 for the discrete part, the quiet part, using technology to have, something as simple as Bluetooth controlling the pump. And we thought our idea was so obvious that it was going to be, we were going to go online and see it, or go into a store and see it literally any day. There was a hackathon in September of 2014 to make the breast pump not suck. And we didn't go because we were worried about IP issues, but we of course read the articles and the proceeds from it. And, again, we were convinced that we were going to see our idea. And so after that, and after there still wasn't the type of product that we had envisioned, we said, maybe we're onto something. And, and maybe we are the right people to build it. If no one else is coming up with this and it feels so obvious to us, we can only wait for so long. And so we've always kind of approached it that, certainly for a new product, like anything, there are going to be people who want to stick with the established companies, the names they know, but there are going to be other people that kind of see the need and the value of this type of innovation. And that's how you start. You start with the early adopters, and then it gets more and more mainstream. And so that's the approach that we're taking.
And Sam, what was happening at your life in that time? It's September 2014. You're having an active conversation with your husband about breast pumps and about innovation in breast pumps. Maybe you were having an active conversation about innovation and technology in the parenting space in general. But what was your life like at that time?
A lot different than it was now. We came up with the idea in March of 2014. We were on a ski trip. We had just come back from traveling abroad. We had kind of this very different life. We had, I like to jokingly say real jobs that were a lot less stressful than what we have now. But, kind of the more traditional career path that you would envision. And we were on this ski trip, and I woke up one morning and literally read an article in the New York Times about breast pumps. And I was not pregnant. Kids were not on our radar. But I knew at some point I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a working mom. I wanted to feed my baby breast milk. I don't even think I could have explained to you that there was a need for a breast pump. I mean, this was just so not on my radar. And I saw this article about how the technology was decades old and how there was no innovation and everything was outdated. And I got really angry. I saw my future flash before my eyes. And I just kind of vividly remember thinking something to the effect of, one more thing we have to deal with. It's going to be hard enough to be a mom and a working mom and kind of all of the things that second shift entails. This should be a product that I shouldn't have to think about. And I woke up Jared, my co-founder, and my husband, and I said, Jared, the blah, 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 and, got on my soapbox. And he kind of opened up one eye and said, I can build it. And this is not a crazy thing for Jared to say, believe it or not. And so we spent the whole drive back that Sunday afternoon after skiing the day, brainstorming what our product would be if we were to make a breast pump. And I found out a couple months later that he had no intention of ever talking about it again. He just wanted to go to brunch. So the joke's on him a little bit.
Yeah, here you are, 4 years later.
Exactly, but we were lucky that our friends were starting to have kids, so we could at least see it. Is this something? Is this really a problem? Is our solution a viable one? And so we spent 2014 really calling it a hobby might be generous.
Okay.
Thinking about it. And again, we were so convinced that someone was going to come up with this idea because to us it was so obvious.
Isn't that interesting? Interesting. So it sounds like it was a bit of a muse and you would play with it and you would talk about it, read about it, but you weren't serious yet. When did you get serious about the business?
So after we saw the hackathon didn't really produce anything kind of even close to what we were thinking of. And at that point, more and more of our friends had babies and kept saying, hey, when are you making this breast pump? Mostly jokingly, but enough that it seemed like there was a there. We basically said at the beginning of 2015 that we need to make a decision, because we had started to spend a lot of money buying breast pumps and playing with breast pumps. And it was either we could go on a really nice vacation, or we could kind of keep playing with breast
buying
pumps.
these breast pumps.
Exactly.
And that was what year? What year was that?
That was the beginning of 2015.
Beginning of 2015. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, we spent almost a full year very much in hobby mode.
So what happens in your story in 2015? I know you had a big career before, a big kind of corporate career before you became an entrepreneur. So what was 2015 like for you? And was that when you made your change with your career?
Yeah, 2015 was a very big year for us personally and professionally. We formally organized the company in March of 2015 and filed for our first provisional patent in May of 2015. We actually won our first grant in June of 2015. Wow. And then I gave birth in July of 2015.
Oh my gosh.
It was a big year. And then that fall, we actually moved to St. Louis because we started the business in Connecticut.
Okay. And what had you moved to St. Louis?
We received an Arch grant.
Okay.
So yeah, when we first started, we were looking at grant funding and non-dilutive funding to kind of just see if this was a business. We didn't want to take on investors until we were confident in what we were doing. And so we applied to a handful of grants across the country, and Arch Grants is in St. Louis, where I'm from. And so the stars kind of aligned, and here we are.
So you moved just a few months after having your son. And you have a baby boy, right?
That's right. He's 2.5 now. I don't know how that happened.
Okay. Yeah, right. I know that's what they say. Time flies with kids.
Yes, absolutely.
I always tell my daughter she's doing a good job growing up, because that's their job, is to keep growing.
I like that. Can I use that? I like that.
You can. I try not to, for myself, I know that I would, it would be too easy for me to feel sad about her growing up and to long for the days, of yesterday. And so I stay focused on that she's doing a good job growing up, and she's doing her job. Her job is to get, stronger and bigger and more independent and more of herself. So yes, and time flies. So you moved to St. Louis with a 4-month-old. Is that when you quit your job?
Essentially, in 2015, Jared and I were both doing consulting work. So we had other clients that we drastically scaled back when we moved.
Okay.
So we both went full time at the end of 2015.
Wow. That's so great. And the Arch grant was the thing that really prompted everything to ignite.
That's right.
So for folks who are joining us and who don't know what Arch grants are, will you tell us about those?
Absolutely. It is, in my opinion, one of the best opportunities for startups in the country, if not the world. And I don't just say that, I truly believe it. Because what they do is they give you $50,000 in a grant, non-dilutive funding. And the only string, if you will, is that you have to move your business to St. Louis for a year. That's it. And, I have to say, when we were flying to St. Louis to pitch, I was 100 months pregnant. Literally. It's a scientific fact, 100 months.
That's a thing.
Just very pregnant. And it was June of 2015. It was literally the last day my OB let me fly.
Oh my gosh.
I was flying. So there you go. And we got on this plane from LaGuardia to St. Louis, and we couldn't have been more snappy. It would have been impossible. I mean, we went to an Ivy League school. We're on the East Coast. What could St. Louis possibly have to offer us that we can't get in Connecticut? I mean, I feel bad for the person sitting behind us, because we cannot.
And they may have been from St. Louis.
Possibly, right? And so, we get off the plane, and we were here for 36 hours. We were not here that long. But it was such a transformational 36 hours. The people we met, the things we were exposed to. I mean, there are companies that have received Arch grants from literally across the globe. I mean, the caliber of people was just so high that we got back on the plane to go back to LaGuardia 36 hours later, and basically biting our fingernails. I hope we're good enough to get in. I mean, we couldn't have been more leveled in a short time frame. And so, we were very fortunate that we received this Arch grant. I mean, it's incredibly competitive. And, the money's nice, obviously, but the connections that we've made have just been, certainly more valuable than the 50,000.
And is that what had you stay in St. Louis, is the connections and the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
It's a handful of things. It's not one thing. Some of it was the connection. Some of it is that there is a lot more non-dilutive funding beyond the Arch Grant, which always helps. But everybody has been willing to meet with us to help us to open up their networks. I like to say that when we're successful, a large part of it is going to be because of St. Louis, and in that way, St. Louis is almost a third co-founder for us.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I have to tell you, I have the same sentiments towards St. Louis. St. Louis has been so good to me. I moved here I say not here because I'm in Illinois right now, but I moved to St. Louis in 1995, right out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I was self-employed in the real estate business. And at that time I moved to St. Charles County, and, people who had lived in St. Charles County all their lives, who had left and come back, or maybe they'd been there forever, really took me under their wing, and I built my business network there. And then I moved over to the St. Louis County side. And when I look at my network and the media and business leaders who create opportunities for me to step into, I am so grateful. And maybe it's like that in other cities. I don't know. I've not lived in other cities other than this hometown that I'm in right now, Litchfield, Illinois. And, it's a very different world here. But I really just want to spotlight your sentiments about St. Louis and acknowledge you for that. A lot of folks have a different experience of St. Louis, and I am more in the kind of the category that you're in of just being so grateful to the community. I think there's something really special here for entrepreneurs, whether you're a startup founder or you have a business that's been in business for multi-generations and you have tens of or hundreds of millions of annual revenue. We have an amazing network here. So I could get on a soapbox about that, but what I really want to hear about from you is diluted and non-diluted funding. So sounds like you knew early on that you wanted non-diluted funding. Is that still the case, or do you now have investors who have a percentage of the company?
Sure. So, once we kind of proved what we were doing, we were much more comfortable going out and seeking more traditional outside investment for startups. And so, we do have investors at this point, and some wonderful people that we waited as long as we could by design, but the people that have come on board have really made a difference, and not just financially. So for us, the timing worked out, and it ended up being a very good decision. Because the truth of the matter is, it is hard to bring any sort of hardware to market, much less a medical device, as breast pumps are, without either being very financially wealthy or bringing on outside investment.
And so tell us a little bit about what has your experience been like looking for that outside investment, diluted or non-diluted? How active have you been in that space? Tell me a little bit about that, because it sounds like you got your first funding in 2015. And so what has funding been like, and looking for funding been like for you over the last 3 years?
So in full disclosure, I'm very strange, but I actually really enjoy it.
Okay.
So I was also the person that loved job interviews. In many ways, kind of pitching for investment is very similar, right? You're essentially selling something, yourself, your company, your vision, whatever it happens to be, and you're trying to get people to buy into it. So kind of, inherent in that is that you're meeting a lot of people, you're having a lot of conversations, and you have to be comfortable being told no. I mean, that's so if you're not, it's probably not going to be a lot of fun for you. But I actually really enjoy that. And we have investors from literally all over the country. And it's been a process that I think has been really successful so far, and hopefully, knock on wood, will continue to be. That said, it's like anything else. Some of it is you've got to be strategic. You've got to have a plan. You've got to know what the right terms are and when the right time is and how much lead time you need. Our process, our strategy has been to kind of do it in chunks. So we raised what we needed in order to develop the product. and we raised what we needed in order to go through the regulatory process, and and so on and so forth. And there are different philosophies and different school of thought about what type of structure you should use, what terms you should use, how much you should raise at once. Even something as simple as what your accompanying pitch deck should look like. And there's a regionality to it, which I find just fascinating. You do it differently in Silicon Valley than you do in New York, than you do in Boston, than you do in St. Louis. And so I've kind of really enjoyed that challenge of trying to strategically think about who and how and where and when. Some people hate it, some people love it, some people do it because it's necessary.
Interesting.
I think certainly on different days I've fallen into all of those categories, which I'm pretty sure is the case for everybody.
Right. I'm sure. So Sam, tell us a little bit about what you've learned through the process of seeking funding that you apply more broadly to your business and your life. There may be people joining us right now who have no interest in pitching for financing to grow their business. So I'm sure there are best practices or insights or wisdom that you've gained through that process of putting yourself out there that you apply more broadly.
Absolutely. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give to anyone starting a business of any kind is you have to know that you're going to believe in your business or your vision or your product more than anybody else. And you have to be comfortable being told no. And I think that advice really applies to anything you do. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everyone is going to agree with you. Investors, just by nature of what they're doing, they're looking for reasons to say no. That is what they are supposed to be doing. And, kind of on a counterpoint, you're trying to give them reasons to say yes. And so you have to be comfortable with failure. And, failure can be a no or a not right now or a we don't like you or it's never going to happen or whatever it's going to have to be. And excuse me, I think that's really good business advice for whatever you're doing, because ultimately you are putting forth a vision and you do have to believe in it, and you have to be comfortable with people not getting it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I often find that people don't totally get my business and my business model. That can be because I haven't really shared with them all of the behind the scenes strategy. It looks like I'm building a consulting company, but I'm not. And that's a different story for a different day. But maybe you could, yeah, right. Well, we'll be, you and I know, we'll be talking more and more in the future as you'll be a panelist with me at the Midwest Women Business Owners Conference. I'm so excited to have you. In fact, we're going to be giving away a ticket to the conference today. So if folks comment on this video from this point forward, they can be entered into a drawing to win a ticket to the conference. And
comment, everybody.
That's right. Comment and come and meet women like Sam from Babyation. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you synthesize and kind of integrate the feedback that you get when you've been out pitching. So, you get feedback that says, this isn't going to work, or we don't like you. Maybe they don't come out and say that, but maybe they do. And so what is your process like to kind of integrate that feedback and make adjustments? Because that too is a really valuable aspect of being a business owner, is to not only look out into the market and make sense of what's out there and then, make some adjustments in your business, but to take feedback.
Absolutely.
So what's that process like for you?
I think for me at least, and I was actually meeting with someone about this right before we sat down, it's consider the source. Because literally as I've been pitching, and we've been pitching not consistently for 2 years, but off and on for 2 years, I've gotten every sort of feedback from, your deck is in the wrong order, you don't have enough slides, you have too many slides. And that doesn't even count the business. That is just the mechanics of what it looks like. And you have to consider the source, because some advice I've gotten is fantastic and it's been worth overhauling, my business model, my strategy, my messaging, whatever it happens to be. And some of it is not as great. And you have to be comfortable and secure enough in who you are and what you're doing to be able to make that judgment call. If you listen to everybody, you will, well, first of all, be wasting a lot of time. But secondly, you'll never move forward, because it's pitching and starting a business it's like resumes. You're going to ask 100 people and you're going to get 100 different answers. And for better or for worse, you as the founder, you as the CEO you are making the decisions. You are determining whose advice you're taking and whose advice you're saying, thank you very much, but I don't think that fits what I'm doing. Maybe you're just saying that in your head, not to them. But, you know, I love that. I like that it's all on me, and sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. But, you know, considering the source, I can always do better. There are people whose judgment that I trust implicitly, and luckily we have a relationship that they can say, oh no, you are way off base here. And then I can recalibrate. And, you know, there are people I've just met that I respect very much, that I think have that, you know, experience and that capability, and whose advice I want to, you know, take to heart. And there are some people that I've known for years that I think just might be off base. And, you know, that is some of it. I kind of like to say I might be wrong, but at least I want to be wrong because of something I did. Yeah. Not because I listened to someone else when my gut was telling me differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how many times have you gone out? How many pitches have you made? I guess that's the question is really, you know, give us a sense of how active you've been in this space in order to secure the funding that you've secured.
So there are different types of pitches. There are pitches to like conferences or events. There are one-on-one coffee meetings that sometimes turn into a pitch. So I couldn't give you a number because I don't know it. What I can tell you is we probably have gone through at least 50 iterations of our deck. And some of that is literally a simple update of how much money we've raised. Some of it is it does not look the same as it looked before. Some of it is tweaking the slides, the order, and, you know, kind of everywhere in between. But as I look at how the deck has evolved since 2015 when we made our first deck, I mean, it is not the same conversation. When we pitched for Arch Grants, which is one of the very early pitches, I mean, probably, you know, first 5 pitches we did. And I think we had 20 minutes to pitch. I very vividly remember Jared and I saying, oh my God, how are we going to get all of this information into 20 minutes? And yesterday I did an 8-minute pitch, and I purposefully had to, I think I stopped it at 6 because, I talk fast and I tend to distill it. And, you know, if I go to 8 minutes at this point, I bore myself. So, you know, some of it is just kind of figuring out what is actually important. How can I tell the most compelling story? Because ultimately that's what a pitch does, right? I kind of view the pitch is not going to get me the yes. The pitch gets me the next conversation. Yes.
Very cool. So you're raising a lot of money. You're going to continue on this path, and give us a sense of why. Is it just for the breast pump? Is there more to the story? So, you know, other than the breast pump and it being a medical device, and so you need funding to get through all of that, you know, what's this all about for you? What else is on the horizon?
Absolutely. You know, we really do view ourselves as a parent tech company. You know, maybe not when we had this first idea in 2014, because we did not have a child. Yeah. So, you know, we did not fully understand the entire opportunity to make better products for parents, as we like to say. But really, you know, ever since Exton, our son, was born, we've been inspired almost every day by things that we can improve on. So, you know,
and you chuckle because that means the things that you're using just suck really bad.
A lot of them do. And I don't like to say that, but yeah, I think if I was putting on my more appropriate hat, a lot of room for improvement.
A lot of room for improvement. Exactly. You know, what I think is so interesting about what you're saying is that people will often say that, you know, you really are your target market. For so many people, the business that they start is in some way, even if it's kind of a deep-seated emotional or psychological need, you are your target audience. You know, in my case, I'm a business coach and consultant for female entrepreneurs and women business owners. And when I look at what I provide for women business owners, it's the same thing that I want. It's the thing that I wanted to, as a young person, provide to my parents who are entrepreneurs. And so, I mean, I take the case that you are your target audience pretty deeply. You know, when I look at it, that for me, I think that my desire to serve this audience was formed in my childhood. And so it sounds like you have the same experience, that you are your target audience, and it's coming through that inspiration comes through your own, now through your own direct experience. Previously, just I'll say almost some strange source of inspiration. Strange because you didn't even have kids yet.
Yeah, it was very accidental.
So
But I have to
fascinating.
say, it is so nice because I worked for almost 10 years at ESPN, and you have to be a sports fan. I literally had to pass sports knowledge tests in order to even have the job.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
I could certainly hold my own, but I was never the target audience.
Hmm.
And so it's actually kind of fun to, for the first time, actually be like, oh yeah, I'm the person I care about, as opposed
Right.
to the person sitting next to me.
Yeah, yeah. And so, that brings me to a question about the rest of your life. You are your target audience. I'm my target audience.
Mm-hmm.
I love to talk business. I love to work with people in their businesses. I'm constantly, assessing businesses that I walk into, even as a customer. And
Mm-hmm.
so, is that what your life is like? Are you just always have your parenting tech mind going? Do you take a lot of time off of work? And when you do, are you still thinking about the business? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, right now there is not a lot of downtime or off time, if you will, just because of kind of the stage and nature of our business. Jared and I try to do dates on Saturday nights, and we have one rule that we can't talk about the baby or the business, which is a
Nice.
nice break. So, we do
Nice.
try to kind of build something in, although in full disclosure, I can't tell you the last time we went
Well, I did notice you said we try to
we
do Saturday
try.
night date.
We,
Yeah,
we,
yeah,
we were we
yeah,
were really good for a while.
yeah,
Life happened.
yeah,
The nice part about our son is that he's 2.5 and running and talking, and definitely it's sometimes hard to think about other things when you're with him.
yeah. Oh, sure. So
So
you're
that's good.
so there. You have to be
Yes.
so right there.
Right, or else he's breaking something or climbing into something, or it's a problem. So that's kind of a nice built-in break. But mentally, I will say I'm a TV junkie. So
Uh-huh.
my me time is I have to kind of unwind in front of the TV, even for just a few minutes, or else I
Okay.
can't go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are
I'm
your
rebelling against my parents because we weren't allowed to really watch TV growing up. So now I watch TV.
So like, I'll show you. I'll show you.
Exactly.
It's interesting you say that, Sam, because I don't watch a lot of TV, and I work a lot. I don't work when I'm with my daughter typically. I mean, today's an exception. She's downstairs with her friend, causing all kinds of a ruckus down there, I'm sure. Sorry to my parents for the condition of the house when we leave. Um, but my thing is I have to scroll Facebook before I go to bed. And by the time I get to bed, I probably haven't been on Facebook at all throughout the day,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit when I woke up. But that's a little bit how I unwind. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, too much phone. I have my phone too much, or I'm on social media too much.
Mm-hmm.
That, in my case, would be a luxury if I had the time to be on my phone or on social media too often. So I unwind in bed at night with after my warm bath. I take a warm bath first, and then I unwind scrolling through Facebook a little bit. I sometimes wear my orange glasses that block out the blue light, because apparently the blue light is supposed to keep
Yeah.
a little bit awake. So I have these huge orange safety glasses. They're about this big, and I layer them over my glasses. I'm such a riot in bed.
Can you please do your next interview wearing them?
I totally should. I'll send you a photo.
Thank you.
So I want to know, what shows do you watch to unwind at night?
Oh, now we're
Let's
really gonna go there. Okay, so it depends on the day of the week. I love any Shonda Rhimes show. I love
She's
Grey's Anatomy.
amazing. Shonda Rhimes
I
is
love her.
amazing.
I love her. I mean, I watch some good TV. I watch a lot of bad TV. My rule of thumb is I actually don't want to think if I'm in front of the TV.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
generally don't want to be sad, although Grey's Anatomy often gets me.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah, that's why I refuse to watch This Is Us. Everybody's
yes,
all about
me
This Is
too.
Us. Like,
Me too.
I am not interested.
Yep, me too.
I am not interested, but I am so excited that Billions just came out with their most recent episode, or their most recent series. But I have to wait until after my conference to start Billions, because I can't afford right now to binge watch anything.
Yeah,
Because
I'm an expert binge watcher. Like that. I could just. I would rather not sleep and binge watch a series.
I know. Yeah, sleep is so critical right now with the phase that I'm in, with my conference coming up in 48 days, that I'm reluctantly waiting to watch Billions until after the conference. But I bet you,
so much more willpower than I do.
that is what I'll be doing after the conference. You know what? I'm older than you. I'm 44 years old, and so you're in your 30s. In your 30s, yeah. So in my 30s, I wasn't as focused on sleep as I am today. So I starting in December, actually, December 2017, I started to get hyper focused on regulating my sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Kind of dialing that back a little bit to 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. oftentimes, just because of my current workload. So, you know, I'm pretty fanatical about sleep so that I have the energy that I need and want to produce, you know, oftentimes all day long, from the time I get up until the time I'm, you know, taking that warm bath and then scrolling through Facebook and then lights out at 10 p.m. So what's your sleep like? You've got a 2.5-year-old. I love to hear people's kind of self-care and sleep. Again, you're in your 30s. You can you can still get away with a little bit more than I can. But tell us about your sleep and your self-care.
So I've never been a person who needs a lot of sleep. My mom says I stopped napping when I was 3 weeks old. So literally sleep and I have never really been friends. My son just started sleeping through the night, like within the last 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, sleep never has been overly important to me. For me, I do much better if I can decompress for those extra hours in front of the TV than if I'm sleeping. So last night, for instance, I was watching TV till 1:30 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
I stopped working at like 11:30 and then watched TV till 1:30. Oh
my gosh. See, it's so interesting. I was getting tired at about 8 p.m. And I ended up staying up until 10 because, again, we're on spring break. We're away. But
I'm on a schedule.
I'm on a schedule. 10 o'clock, lights are out, phone is off. My daughter and her friend stayed up until 11:45 p.m., but I was asleep. I didn't mind. So now, do you use caffeine throughout the day? See, I'm caffeine free on the protocol that I'm on with my sleep. And so do you use caffeine to power through the day?
I have a cup of coffee, mostly because I love the taste of coffee. Yeah. I love the taste of coffee. But I generally don't have more than 2 cups.
Okay.
I have this whole theory that your schedule is set in your 20s based on your job. And so at ESPN, I work nights and weekends. So almost no one is in the office before 10 a.m. Executive does not matter because you're all watching sports, you're watching the shows. So 10 a.m. was a very early time to go to work, and you're working till 2 or 3. So, you know, we had this joke that I should not be pitching anybody before 9:30. It doesn't matter how much coffee there is, I'm in coaching.
Right. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. See, when I didn't sleep before, I used to use coffee to power through the day, and now everything's changed. So I love it. That's an interesting idea. Your schedule is kind of set in your 20s. I can see that. Yeah. So, I mean, well, you know, some people are like, or you said, you know, I'll get up early. I'll get up at 5. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is a miracle we get up when the baby gets up. That's and we trade off. You know, you have to get up first. No, you have to first. Right. But you know, at night we both work, you know, well past midnight most nights. Oh my gosh, that is so interesting. Wait till the Exton starts school. That changes everything because you have to get them to school on time. So he started, and we have to be there by 8:30, and it is every day he's there. It is a miracle. We're like, how did we do that? Do you just roll out of bed and take him, and then you come back and get dressed for the day, or? So we usually, Jared takes him to school, and we usually, one of us can get out the door. It's when we both have to be out the door by 8:30 that it's tough. So yesterday I had to be out the door by 7, which was a minor miracle that we both got to where we needed to go on time, because neither one of us are morning people. And we live with my parents because we're in, you know, the startup world. Yeah. And my mom is a morning person, and she just laughs so hard at us every single morning. Like, you would think at this point we would know what we're doing. No, she just laughs at us. Oh, I love it. I love it. So I have an employee who lives in Europe, and she's my right hand in the business. She's my business manager, Shannon Redling. We've worked together for 13 years. And so I am up early in part because I have many mornings that I have a 6 a.m. call with her. And, you know, it's amazing how we can use technology to run the business and to have really a seamless experience of working together through Google Hangouts, through Google Sheets, through Google Chat, you name it, we use it to really simulate an office environment. So what technology do you use to make your business run smoothly that folks joining us today and watching this video might apply in their business? So
most, if not all, of the technology we use is due to whatever Jared implements, because that is part of what he does in his former life, or did, I should say, in his former life. He's a technology guy. So it's funny, his background is not, with Google stuff, it's more Microsoft products. So we use a lot of Microsoft products. So I've had to find myself kind of trying to learn Google products. And a lot of the people that we work with only use Google, so we need to bring them to Microsoft. So that is often a funny conversation. But, I love technology. When I was at ESPN, I worked in Connecticut. My team was in LA, and they worked nights in LA. So, you just kind of flex to the schedule and you figure it out. And I think video conferencing and kind of, if it's Skype, if it's Google Hangouts, whatever it happens to be, that is life-changing.
It is. I agree. It really, I think it's amazing how connected you can feel when you add that dimension of body language and seeing someone, and how different it is than connecting with people just over the phone.
Yep.
So you're on Microsoft Office probably 365, and you use all of those 365 tools.
Do.
Okay. And I think each business has to choose. Are they going to be all Microsoft? Are they going to be all Google? I don't know. Or I guess if they could be all Apple. I never went on the Apple side for a machine, just on my, remote devices like my iPhone, iPad. What about, Sam, what about kind of productivity hacks or productivity tips? It sounds like you have a lot on your plate. You are a co-founder with your husband. You're married, you have a 2.5-year-old, you have a thriving startup business with investors. We hear how you sleep, and that you
That's
work,
my trick.
Right, your trick is your schedule. You work a lot, like most entrepreneurs do. What are your productivity tips or hacks that support having you manage all of that?
I think it's all about prioritization. I really do. So, I might not be folding laundry for a long time, but I will be replying to the emails that are the most important. And it's really all about knowing what has to be done and when it has to be done, and kind of being okay that you're not going to get everything.
Oh, man.
In my house, it's often, the chores that fall to the wayside, or, Exton always has clean clothes, but we may not.
Right.
Whatever we might be digging through that laundry basket as we try to get out the door on time. Happens more often than it should, but that you just have to kind of accept it and be okay with it. And I like to say that we can kind of chase perfection in one or two or maybe 3 areas, but not in all of them.
Yeah.
And so I've opted to focus as much as I can on my business and on being a mom. And, that means that I don't work out as much as I might like, or I don't cook. I love to cook. But, maybe we don't eat as healthful meals or as home cooked meals as I'd like. And something has to give. And I kind of have to pick what that is.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I love that hearing from someone in their 30s who is already embracing that. I often work with clients in their 40s, their 50s, sometimes even their 60s, who really wish they could do it all the time. And I too use a prioritization methodology that's really at the heart of my productivity, is knowing that I'm never going to get it all done. And what am I focused on right now? And I'm going to get through that. And then I'm going to look at my list or my calendar, and I'm going to know what to focus on next. And, for me, it's a social life. And that's, I have a lot of satisfaction in my relationships with my clients and with my close friends and with my family. But the thing that I have, let go, one of the many things I've let go of, is having a booming social life and being out on Saturday night. On Saturday night when my daughter's with her dad, I'm in my comfy clothes, typically working on projects, and then home on the couch or taking that bath and scrolling through Facebook. So, I endorse what you're saying completely. And I would love to hear, if you're really calendar driven, how much your calendar, your schedule comes in as one of your tools. It's my number one mission control. I use my calendar for everything. What about you? Is the calendar a real driver for you?
I think for the most part, one of the things that I like most about what I do is I'm never literally in the same place. So, I mean, just something as simple as my calendar dictates where I am on any given day. I mean, certainly not only what I have to do and what meetings I have and what deadlines I have to meet, but literally where I am. So, today I'm at Rise because I had another meeting here and that was very easy to dictate. Next week I have a lunch downtown, so I'll be at our downtown office or whatever it happens to be. Or I have a lot of coffees because when you pitch investors, you have a lot of coffees. I could tell you basically every coffee house in St. Louis at this point. And so, that's part of why this is not a pitch for Rise, I swear, but that's part of why, having this membership was so important is because we live in Chesterfield. Our offices are downtown. Having somewhere kind of in the middle to not lose all that time driving is really helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like it would really support your productivity and not driving around town all the time and burning up time in the car when you could be sitting and doing some work in between appointments.
That's right. I have been known to be sitting in a carpool line with my laptop out trying to send in a couple emails.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, the other thing, I don't know if this is a productivity hack or not, I work really well from home. Not everybody does, but I would almost always, meetings aside, rather save that time driving and just work.
Yeah, I love working I can work anywhere. It sounds like you. I can work anywhere. Just 2 nights ago, my daughter went roller skating with one of her friends. And you know what? I popped up my laptop in that roller skating rink and used my hotspot and processed some email and, gave my attention to her when she would come over, but otherwise I was doing my thing and she was doing her thing. So sounds like you could work anywhere as well.
I can, and what I like about, kind of our childcare situation is I pick Exton up from school, we hang out. And, and I'm very happy to be focused on him. It's something that's important. I will certainly be pulling out my phone or dealing with it if it needs to.
Sure.
But I try very hard to protect that time because I know I'm going to be right back at it, staying up late.
Yep.
I'm getting up early.
Yep. Yep.
But, I love that freedom.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility because I know that anytime I'm not working, that's not always great for the business. But it is, it is certainly what I need to do to stay sane and to be kind of, a good parent and a good business owner.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. In fact, my daughter, I started this company when she was 1 year old and I've always been self-employed, except I did go to work for one of my clients during my pregnancy and the first year of motherhood. And then I was itching to go back out on my own. So I did that. And, I've always made it the point of not working when she's in my care, except for the times like right now when I absolutely have to. Well, I don't have to, but I'm prioritizing this over being with her right now. And because I do that so rarely, she is so cooperative and such a good sport. And that started at a very young age. She would be in the back of the car and I'd say, look, Audrey, I just got a text message and I have got to call this client back. She's having a bit of an emergency. So I need about 15 minutes that you're just going to drive and listen to my conversation. And she'd be, okay, mommy. And because I didn't pull that card often.
Right.
So when I did, she would listen into the conversation. I would sometimes ask her, did you learn anything? Or she would ask me, I remember one time, Sam, it was so funny. She said, well, what's the emergency? And I said, well, this employee quit and they've got all these people showing up tomorrow that need to use their computers and there's no IT person to run all the computers. And Audrey was coming up with solutions. She's like, well, I think they need to just go to a nearby hotel and use all the computers at that hotel. So I share that because, I'm a little further along on the parenting journey than some of the folks who will be joining us. And you're at that phase where Exton will be listening in and he will be observing. And, I think there's something to be said for, they get your undivided attention most of the time that you're with them, and then sometimes they don't. And that is actually a really good thing.
Yes, it is. I agree.
I endorse your approach completely. Sometimes there's an important email that you've got to send and you need to send it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and it's cute, we start to teach him a little bit, right? He knows the name of our company.
Yeah.
He says, mommy and daddy are entrepreneurs.
I love it.
Starting to get it a little bit.
I love that. I love that. So, Sam, what have we not talked about in this conversation that you think would be useful for folks who are joining us who want to know about you and about the business? You know, you've gotten some great press in St. Louis and probably nationally, I would think. You know, what's not often covered in the press that you want people to know about you, or you and Jared, or you, Jared and Exton, or your business, anything at all?
That's a really good question. I think, you know, what doesn't always get talked about, and this is not, you know, this is not a me thing or even a Babyation thing, is, you know, I think they're kind of two behind the scenes stories. The first is the sisterhood of female founders. You know, there's a lot of stories about how hard it is for women to raise money, and I'm not going to touch that, right? That's an aside. But what I have not seen talked about is how helpful women are to one another. You know, it's in many ways the opposite of what it's like in the corporate world, where you hear so many stories about women not helping each other and not holding a hand up. You know, I don't think it's easy for people who are not founders to understand what this journey is like. You know, there are some days it's really hard. Some days it's amazing. It's, you know, it's the best roller coaster ride you're ever going to go on. But it's really hard to fully understand the challenges if you haven't lived them. And I've been fortunate to find so many amazing women from literally across the country that I know if I'm having a bad day, I can go to, and they can make me feel better in a way that my best friend, who is amazing and has a fantastic job at a big company in New York, she says all the right things and does all the right things, but she's not living it. And so that is invaluable, and that is something that is never talked about, and I think should be. You know, and I think kind of the follow-up to that is, we hear a lot about the success stories, but we don't hear about some of the sacrifices and compromises that people make in order to get there. You know, we live with my parents. I wear that as a badge of pride, but nobody wants to be 36 and living with their parents and their son if there's not a really good reason.
Yeah. That's beautiful. You know, I wholeheartedly agree with your point about the myth that maybe that entrepreneurs aren't as supportive of each other, female entrepreneurs. In fact, earlier this year, I wrote an article called "The Myth of the Catty Female Entrepreneur." And, you know, I really focused on the shine theory, Anne Friedman's shine theory, which says, and I think that most female entrepreneurs that I know and interact with absolutely endorse this. The shine theory says, I don't shine if you don't shine. And the difference in entrepreneurship than in corporate America is that in corporations, there are fewer seats at the table for women. And so the infrastructure and the architecture of that environment causes people, women, to be more competitive with each other. And there's research that backs that. So that's not my opinion. I've never worked in corporate America, so I haven't experienced that firsthand. Whereas I agree completely, in an entrepreneurial environment, women, or men and women, are extremely supportive of each other. And a lot of folks are even hesitant to call the other companies competitors.
That's right.
Because, you know, they really see how unique each person is. And there are oftentimes more points of collaboration than not.
That's right.
So I love that. I love your point about that. Behind the scenes is that female entrepreneurs are very supportive of each other. And I agree that there's oftentimes no substitute for talking with another female entrepreneur who totally gets what you're up to.
That's right.
Yeah. And you have a spouse, you have a built-in entrepreneur supporting you. But that creates a whole different set of challenges, which you don't have to get into today, the challenges. But what is it like working with your husband and co-founding this business together?
You know, it works for us. And I certainly recognize that for most couples, it would be, let's call it not fun.
Right. I would say a nightmare for some people. Some people.
I was thinking disaster, but I didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
But for us, it works. You know, we met in college a very long time ago, and we met at the campus TV station. And he was on the engineering side, and I was on the business side. And I went to work at ESPN, and his company designed ESPN's control rooms. He developed software for me that I used at ESPN. So we've always worked closely together. You know, when I was there, I launched a lot of new technologies. And if there's something I didn't understand, I could call him. He could explain it to me in 2 seconds, and then I could be a much better contributor to the conversations. And that was kind of in a lot of ways my competitive advantage, because I was the business person who got it.
Yeah.
And so we've always had that interplay of being on the same industry but on different sides.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, this was a very natural thing. There was no transition because we've worked together and collaborated so many times. If it was someone that I didn't have that history with, well, first of all, I wouldn't have done it. But secondly, I don't think it would have been fun or beneficial or productive. But, it is nice to know that not only are all of our goals fully aligned, but, we can be very direct and very blunt while knowing that we truly have, each other's best interest and the company's best interest. And, we are both working on this full time. We both want this to be successful. So if he says something to me, he's not jockeying for something. It is truly to be better and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. Well, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family where my parents worked together, and they built a couple of businesses together, and that's all I've ever known. And I'll tell you, as the child of a pair of entrepreneurs, it was a beautiful thing to see my parents working together and they each had their very distinct roles. They were two completely different roles. And, they are, life partners in every sense because of all of the shared experiences that they've had. And I hope that you have the same success and partnership that they have. Today, they are, after they sold their businesses, they had always dreamed of living on a boat in Florida. And that's exactly where they are right now, while I'm here in their house. And we started as a family with nothing, qualifying for, reduced lunches, because my parents were entrepreneurs. And they started from nothing in our dining room. So just like you starting out in your parents' house, anything is possible in entrepreneurship, which is one of the things that I love about it, is there are no limitations except for the limitations that we create in our own minds. And then we speak them out loud, and those limitations become real.
Yeah.
Just like speaking our dreams become real.
Exactly. I often say that entrepreneurial success is so much a mental game, right? Can you get through the hard parts? Can you stay, can you keep believing? Can you find a way, around the challenge or out of the problem? And look, there are sometimes real things that happen that prevent a business from being successful. But I think all too often the mental piece is the hurdle.
Totally agree. Well, Sam, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. I can't wait to interview you at the Midwest Women Business Owners Conference. It will be a different conversation than we've had here. I'll be in touch with you about that. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we are giving away a ticket to the Midwest Women Business Owners Conference for folks who've commented on that. So I'll announce that next week. And last week I gave away a ticket, and I said I'd announce the winner this week, and it's Sherry Suma from the Radon Company. Yeah, congratulations, Sherry. And so I'll be reaching out to Sherry, and I just want to thank EQ, the EQ Media Lab at T-Rex. When you office at T-Rex, that's one of your other offices, right?
That's right. So that's our primary office.
Your primary office. You're a fan of the co-working space, as am I, both Rise Collaborative Workspace in Clayton and T-Rex, our partner on this show, downtown St. Louis. And we use Anders CPAs and advisors, and they're actually a sponsor of this show.
We use them too.
Oh, we use Anders too. Yeah. See, I was going to say they are, they have a division focused on startups. So do you work with Dave Finkeling?
And I cannot say enough good things about him. Can we do another hour on Dave?
I know.
Please, because he's amazing.
He's going to be coming on May 18th, the day after the conference, to talk a little bit about what he does. One of the reasons we chose Anders, and I would think the same is true for you, is that they can meet us where we are today. And then as we grow to have a national and international presence, and to have licensees of one of our products all over the country, they can grow with us. We're not going to outgrow them. I mean, they'll outgrow us if anything, which they wouldn't. You know, they have an eye on the whole spectrum from startup to huge companies. They have relationships all over the world through their leading edge alliance. So I love hearing that you use Anders too.
We got matched with them through Arch grants, so completely accidental. And we've actually, through various competitions we've won, we've received free accounting services that we've turned down to pay Dave and Anders because he is worth every penny. And I hope he never drops me as a client. Do you hear that, Dave? No matter how much I torture you, please keep us.
Right, that's right, that's right. I love it. I love it. Well, what a great way to share about Anders. I endorse them completely.
Yes.
Well, Sam, thank you so much. This was a ton of fun. I'll be back on Founders Speak Live next week. So folks will join me live next week at 2:30 p.m. Central Time on EQ's page. But for now, let's sign off. And Sam, I'll be in touch with you about our interview at the Midwest Women Business Owners Conference very soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.